So, do you have any funny labels on your alarms?
No, I don't keep my alarms. Once it's gone off, I just delete it.
That's really sad. Mine are weird.
Yeah.
Pack pink blanket, cocktail shaker. Don't know what that was for.
I suppose I've got some calendar notes that might be silly, but no, they're all really dull. Don't forget to deliver to Mrs. Miggins, that kind of thing.
Okay. Mine's normally ring Jess, ring Mum. One of them says wake Dad up. Okay.
Right.
So, bit weird, but
good.
I don't change them. I just think they make me giggle in the morning.
Thanks for sharing, Sophie.
Yeah, sorry. Oversharing as always. Sorry, Dad. We'll get going then, shall we?
Go on then.
I feel like I need a drink of water first, guys. Not gonna lie. Hi, and welcome to episode 3 of the Marple Journal Podcast, a podcast all about the amazing people and things that we have going on in the local area. I'm Sophie Cook, your host, and today Dan from Cheshire Food Company is in the studio with us. He's an entrepreneur, business owner, just an all-round great guy. Welcome, Dan. That was really nice,
Thanks.
wasn't it? Don't know where that came from.
No, but I like it. You can use that again sometime.
You're welcome. Welcome to the studio. Welcome
Thanks,
to
Sophie.
Cheshire Podcast Studio.
I like it. It's nice here, isn't it?
How are you feeling about being here?
Yeah, good. A cup of tea is good.
There you go. Thanks,
Yeah.
Thanks Morgan, for the cup of tea.
Thanks, Morgan.
So, to start with, I would intro you, but I feel like it's better for you to do that.
Okay.
Could you just introduce yourself and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Dan Stringer, and I own the Cheshire Food Company. We're a catering business, been around for probably about 5.5 years now. And we do a couple of different things, well, 3 or 4 different things. We are a traditional catering business, so we cater for parties, events, funerals, weddings, bar mitzvahs, all the usuals. And then we also make frozen ready meals, which we sell online. Like a really good homemade style frozen ready meal, the kind of thing that you'd want your mum to leave in the freezer for you after a busy day.
That's literally me.
Work. Yes,
I was like, is there a Dan's veggie lasagna in the freezer?
Well, there's not one here. But we
didn't bring any.
I know, I'm sorry.
Honestly.
But we can organise that. That's fine.
Okay, I'll be waiting.
Yep. And then recently we've started wholesaling more. So we wholesale to butchers, farm shops, some sports clubs. And that's part of the business that we're really giving a bit of a kick at the minute. So yeah, we're busy. We're making some good food. The business is growing. The world's looking good at the moment.
Oh, very positive.
Yeah.
Positive vibes in the studio today. Yeah. So obviously, as we're called the Marple Journal, we've got to mention Marple a little bit. So what's your connection to Marple?
I live in Marple, in Hort Green, so that's probably a pretty good
Not
connection.
far from me, actually. That's
true. I moved to Marple in 1999, I think it was, with my now wife, from Sheffield originally. So I had to get my visa stamped to leave Sheffield. We moved here in 99 and loved it ever since. It's such a lovely village.
It's actually a town.
Is it? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I always say village.
Yeah. Okay. All right. It's a lovely town. Friendly people, great sense of community. In the past I've had a business on the high street, and I've grown to know so many different people. Got some great friends from that, and it's there's something about Marple that you can't quite put your finger on, but it is lovely. I think it is the community.
It is,
and quantifying community is a difficult thing to do, but
I know what you mean.
It's a good place to live.
And our listeners...
Not very good for your podcast, though, is it?
Our listeners and I was going to say podcasters, our listeners and watchers get it. If you're from Marple, you get the Marple feel. That's why, I've moved away quite a few times with uni and work, but here we are again. I'm back in Marple, enjoying the scenery, the community feel. Everyone does know everyone, which...
Yes.
Sometimes it's nice, sometimes, a bit much, but we're being appreciative.
Yeah.
So obviously talking about your company, and you mentioned there about previous business you had, how did Cheshire Food Company start? Talk me through that process.
Okay. So I started this Cheshire Food Company in 2019. My eldest daughter was out of school long term. She wasn't very well, and I was at home with her. She has chronic fatigue syndrome, right? So good days and bad days, and on the bad days, she didn't actually need a great deal of active care. She just needed somebody with her, right? So at the time, I was working at Littlewoods Butchers in Marple. The finest butchers in Marple.
Little shout out there.
Don't tell the people at White's that I said that.
Hey, you've recorded it now.
Damn. So I left my job at Littlewoods to look after Martha, and I was kind of, because she didn't need much active care, just frankly, someone to make her a cup of tea every now and again, and maybe a bit of lunch. I was kind of mulling over what I could do, trying to think of something I could do from home. At the same sort of time, I had some friends whose dad wasn't very well, and they said, "Oh, Dan, while you're at home, would you mind just making some lasagna for my dad and dropping it round?" Of course I did, at which point there was a proper light bulb moment. Like, I wonder if there's other people who could do with some really good homemade food dropping round. Thought about it for a few days, decided, well, I can certainly do something whilst I'm at home with Martha. So I built a website, a really crude, rudimentary, pretty naff website, but a website all the same. Told everybody I knew about it. And, about a week later, sold my first few things I'd sold some things to friends and family, but then I got my first order from somebody that I didn't know. And that was incredible. Incredible's probably over-egging it slightly, but it was wonderful. Like, somebody's found me and thinks they like my food. So
found my rubbish website.
Yeah, exactly.
And put an order in. Brilliant.
Yeah, and haven't looked back since. It's been a fun 5 or so years.
So talking about Martha's illness, and that's why you started Cheshire Food Company.
Yeah.
Taking it back to before that,
yeah.
And when you ran Toast in Marple.
I did.
That I know, but some of the listeners and watchers might not know.
Sure.
So can you tell us about that first business you set up?
Yep.
And what happened there?
Sure. So in 2006, my wife and I, along with another couple, decided that there was a need in Marple for a really good coffee shop and deli, because there wasn't anything. Coffee shops were a thing in Manchester. Starbucks was open, Costa probably was as well, but in Marple it was still fairly ordinary cafes in the traditional kind of fried breakfast and a cheese and ham salad sandwich kind of cafe. There wasn't anything any more contemporary than that. So we saw an opening there, got together, opened Toast Deli on Market Street in 2006. It grew really well. In 2010, we decided to move on to Derby Way. At which point, our friends who would start the business with didn't want to be involved anymore, which was fine, so we parted ways. And we ran Toast Deli on Derby Way for another couple of years. A year after moving to Derby Way, Costa Coffee opened in Marple. And literally overnight, our coffee sales dropped 30%.
Oh my gosh. So
of course, cake sales drop, and then, lunch sales drop. And it was tough times. So for the next 12 months, we tried everything we could to keep going. We'd started previously opening for an evening or two in the week for dinner. So we opened more in the evenings. And they were great. And my chef at the time, Ryan, such a talented chef, he was doing great things. But the decline of the daytime sales was just too much. So in September 2012, we had to close the business. My wife and I ended up bankrupt. It was tough times. But you learn some stuff through adversity. And we've learned a lot through that. And actually, a lot of what happened through the growth and then the decline of Toast has really, really coloured how I approach my business now.
Interesting, yeah, because it all does kind of have that ripple effect type thing where you learn it's a horrendous time, but the tools you learn from that do influence it. What I was going to ask, going through bankruptcy, like all that difficulty having a small business, how did that impact your mental health?
Quite significantly. Yeah, so from Costa rocking up on the scene in 2011, it must have been, and the pretty swift decline. It was really tough. I wasn't very well. Paula, my wife, recognised I wasn't well, and encouraged me to go to the doctor, who immediately prescribed me with antidepressants, which got me through the last year of the decline. And then when the business did finally close, I sort of went into hibernation for the best part of a year.
Yeah.
Didn't really want to leave the house. I did, but I didn't want to. It was a struggle to get out. I was in a bit of a pickle, really. And then, slowly improved. And I got myself a part-time job at Lyme Park. Do
you love Lyme Park?
I know. In the estate office at Lyme Park. Oh. So that must have been, 2014, probably. And that was such a healing place. The estate office at Lyme Park is in the front of the house at Lyme.
Oh, lovely.
So overlooking the they call it the circle, don't they, at the front, and looking down the avenue there. You get in the morning and there'd be deer just walking past the office window.
That is just what you need at that point, isn't it?
It was absolutely what I needed at that moment, yeah. And so, I did start to get slightly better and to improve. Mental health improved. But it was good. I was thinking about this morning. I probably was on medication for 8-9 years. Even though, the really traumatic part was a year or maybe 18 months. It took 8 or 9 years to go through that journey.
Did you feel kind of embarrassed to be on antidepressants? Because I know there's a lot of stigmas around going on the medication or struggling with mental health, which I'm really passionate about talking about it because I think we need to. That's how, if we're vulnerable with each other, that's how more people will be able to talk about it. But did you ever feel like, I can't go on them, I don't want to? Or were you just in that place where that is the only thing you could kind of do? Yeah,
it wasn't really a problem, I don't think. To me, it was like, if I'd broken my arm, I'd have a cast on my arm because that's what it needed. So I saw the GP and prescribed what was needed. And so I didn't find that problem. But I know plenty of people that do.
Yeah.
Like, as you said. And it is difficult. But yeah, it's the right tool for whatever's going on. So I'd encourage anybody not to worry too much about that. And the world's very different now to how it was, 15 years ago.
That's true.
People are so much more open about their struggles now than they ever were. So
something I want to loop back on. I know you said Martha struggles with chronic fatigue syndrome, but she was ill previous to this, wasn't she?
Oh, yeah.
And could you talk me through that?
Yeah. When she was 2 years old, my wife took her to the doctor because her urine smelt weird. A very odd thing, if you ask me, to notice that urine smells weird, but that's some other thing, maybe. I don't know.
Motherly instinct.
Yeah, absolutely. And they ran some tests, and the protein levels in urine were sky high. So a few trips to the GP and then to the hospital loads of tests, and she was eventually diagnosed with a kidney disorder called focal segmental glomerular sclerosis.
Oh God, that's a long name.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I never thought I'd forget how to say that, but I had to remind myself this morning. Yeah, which is basically it's a scarring of the kidneys, which causes them to become less and less effective as a kidney. So she was diagnosed, I don't know, maybe a couple of years later, and there was really only one direction of travel with that. They were only ever going to fail. It was just a case of managing the decline and being ahead of it. So it didn't cause too much trouble. Yeah, so she had, a hospital trip at least once a month from being 2. And you wouldn't have known that she was ill, right? If she was charging around. You might have noticed that her face was slightly swollen or something from the water retention, but she was a perfectly normal kid. Still is a perfectly normal kid, just the record. And then in, I can't remember the year now. I want to say 2015, around there somewhere. The specialist just called Paul and I and said, look, this has got to a point where we need to start planning now for what we do when they fail, because it's getting close. So my wife and I both had tests to see if we were compatible donors, which we both were.
Right.
But I won. and I got to donate a kidney to Martha in 2015. She had 6 months or so on dialysis, and then I donated a kidney. And that's been perfectly well and healthy ever since.
Wow.
No bother for her, none for me. That's all gone beautifully well.
That's amazing. I mean, I've said this to you before, like, what an amazing thing to do. But then you're like, but who wouldn't do that for their child?
Yeah, and that is true. I think the amazing thing is the work that the surgeons do in the hospital do. That's the amazing thing.
This is true. Yeah.
For my wife and I, it was a very simple decision. My daughter needs a kidney. I've got one that would work. Have my kidney.
It's still a big thing, though. Like, from the outside, I guess when you're in that moment, it's like, well, this is what's happening. There's no other option, is there? But
no.
But that is incredible, and I think that's just such an amazing story. I think the combination of, like, your personal story, the family story, and the business, like, is so powerful. I say this, I'm sure listeners and watchers will be thinking the same. What I'd want to ask is, what advice would you give someone that's possibly in a really dark place at the moment, like you were, trying to find some purpose again?
That's a good question, Sophie.
Oh, thank you so much.
Trying to find some purpose. I think, it's obviously going to be very different for everybody, right? I can only really give my experience of that because everybody is different. For me, I've always been slightly entrepreneurial anyway. So even in days where I was, hiding at home and not wanting to go out, I was probably always thinking about what I could do, what I'd like to do. There were absolutely days where I'd wallow in self-pity, but there was also days where I'd think, one day I'd like to do whatever. And so the advice I suppose I would give is try and look forward. So if you spend all your time in the moment, particularly when that moment's a really dark place, then that's going to be really difficult. If you look forward, even if that forward is an hour or a day, that's got to be more positive, I think. The caveat here is that I've got no medical experience whatsoever, so that might not be the right advice.
Yeah, but you've got lived experience.
But I have got lived experience, yeah. So I was always thinking, I wonder if I could one day do that or do this. That probably helped me. And that might, and I'm thinking from a sort of an entrepreneurial point of view. I was always thinking about what could I do for work when I'm better. But it might be, could I go for a walk tomorrow? Yeah. Could I have a friend round for a cup of tea? But looking forward has got to be, I would imagine, more positive.
And starting with those small things. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to set up my own business in an hour.
No.
It might be, I'm going to research, or I'm going to maybe brainstorm what I could do, or go outside, see a friend. Because I think these small things to improve your well-being are the big things, because they add up. And then you realise, oh, this week I feel slightly lighter, or that person actually made me feel better, and then you can kind of shuffle forward.
Yeah.
Take those little steps.
Yeah.
So Cheshire Food Company, obviously it's grown quite a lot over the years. Where are you at now? What new things are coming up?
Yep.
Tell me all about it.
It's my favourite topic.
Fine.
So I started, as I said, we started the business just over 5.5 years ago as a home-based business. And I was adamant when I started this that when I'd finally realised that actually there might be a business here, I was adamant that I didn't want to employ staff, I didn't want to carry stock, and I didn't want to pay for premises. Because if you can get rid of those three costs out of any business, then you might not be onto a winner, but you've certainly you've made things easier for yourself, right? And this comes back to the experience from Toast. You know, when I think about my wage bill and my rent bill, and it'd be, there's nothing you could do about it. So I did that. Started from home. Thankfully, my wife is possibly the most patient woman in the world, and doesn't
shout
mind.
Out.
And doesn't mind me rattling around the kitchen all day, every day, making a mess, a managed mess, but a mess all the same. And so we grew. And I always talk about we. I mean, it's only me, right? At the minute, it's going to be we. But the business grew. Started in 19, in 2020, March 2020, pandemic. Business tripled overnight, which was great.
Yeah.
Caused a few headaches and problems, but that's okay. And haven't looked back from there, really. I mean, I know now that I've got customers that I picked up on in the first week of the pandemic.
That's amazing.
Which is great.
Yeah.
So we're still cooking delicious frozen meals. I don't know if I put my hands that big. It's about that big, but anyway.
The big pans.
They are big pans. So we're still making and selling frozen meals. Increasingly, we're doing more outside catering. And wholesaling, like I said before, increasing that. And I've got my first member of staff starting in June.
How exciting.
Very exciting. Another Dan who's joining the business.
Obviously.
Just keep it easy for us both. And he's a really talented chef. He's a nice guy. He's got a similar mindset to me, so somewhat entrepreneurial. Happy to do anything, to try anything. Just such a good find.
Oh, God.
And I wasn't thinking that I wanted to expand and grow any more than I had, really. I was quite happy to carry on in that classic kind of sole trader lifestyle business sort of way.
Yeah.
So it was paying me just enough for what I needed. And then I met Dan a couple of years ago when we were both covering some shifts at the Crown in Hawk Green. And then he came and helped me on an outside catering job. And I kind of realised very quickly that he was a guy that I would want to work with more.
Nice.
If ever I could. And then at the Marple Food Festival last year,
nice.
We had a stall peddling pies, Dan and I, and we had a great day. We sold out of pies in, it was about 3.5 hours.
Wow.
So we packed up, went for a pint, like you do.
Obviously.
And we were just talking through the possibilities that were out there. And at this point, I still wasn't thinking I wanted to employ anybody. And he basically talked me into giving him a job.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're like, fine, okay.
Yeah. So we talked about it more over the next few weeks. I talked about it with Paula, my wife, who Paula is a brilliant operations manager. She knows how to pull a budget to pieces. But she said, look, just write me some forecasts, Dan. Let's talk about it. Let's see if it makes any sense. And then maybe talk to Dan some more. Anyway, so she pulled the budget to pieces. We thought it might work. I talked to Dan about, are you really going to consider leaving a job, a full-time permanent job, to come and work with me, in this tiny business? He said, yeah, I think we can do something really good. And I think we can do something really good.
Oh.
So he joins in June.
Nice.
Which is really exciting. And one of the things I've started doing is blogging about it, about this journey. Because I thought it might be interesting for people to really see how a business grows.
I agree.
Because we're all ever so slightly nosy, aren't we?
Well, this is what this podcast is.
Yeah.
People can get to know, people behind the businesses and talk about, the positives, but also the struggles. Because if you've started your own business, it's obvious there's going to be bumps along the way, little, maybe big bumps, you know. But I think people are nosy, but it's also interesting to find out why you started your business. And the blog is a way to do that. Podcast is a way to do that. On that note, what's your advice for someone starting their own business? Be prepared.
I think, and going back to my experience, how it's really coloured my outlook. I think we live in an age, don't we, where there's so much technology about that, to start. So if you want to start a catering business 30 years ago, you'd have to go and rent a kitchen somewhere. And you'd have to, drive and see every local business and give out information and, put stuff through letterboxes. And that would be an expensive thing to do. You don't have to do that now. You can build a website, use social media, word of mouth. You can work from home. There's many ways to do something. Having a presence on the high street or some premise on the high street doesn't make you any more or less of a valid business than being a bloke in a kitchen at home, or converting the basement of your house into a podcast studio. Don't know what you're talking about. This isn't any less valid because it's in the basement of a house. Perfectly good business. Yeah. The point is, there's many different ways to do things. So don't think that the traditional way of doing it has to be the way it's been done. Yeah. Keeping your costs low, I think, is the point I'm probably getting to. Keep your costs as low as you can for as long as you can. Get some money in the bank so that when you do get to a point where you can grow, you can afford to do it because you've got the money in the bank. Rather than spending your money on your premises or whatever, and then when you want to grow, you have to borrow the money from the bank. Yeah.
And a lot of the time it's the marketing side of things, isn't it? So you've got your website, you've got your socials, it's word of mouth, it's, reviews, all of that side of things. Yep. Yes, you're based from home, but the presence is still there. And you've interestingly got that experience of having the high street cafe and having the online business. Yep. And you can compare and contrast. And I guess that's an interesting side of things, because I think you do think anything kind of food or hospitality related, they must have a shop on the high street. But that's just not the way of the world now.
Not at all.
And you're, an example of how things have grown online.
Yeah.
So let's promote your business while we're here.
Go on then.
Fine. How can people find you? Plug yourself, go on.
Yep. So the website for the frozen meals is cheshirefood.co.uk.
Mm-hmm.
The catering website is marplecatering.co.uk. Instagram is cheshirefood.co. And I can't for the life of me think what the Facebook handle is, but it'll be Cheshire Food something. They'll
find it.
Yeah.
And tell the audience what your best sellers are. Get them thinking about what they might order from you.
Yeah, the butter chicken curry is the best seller by far. It outsells the next bestseller by about 2 to 1. For the vegetarians amongst us, the mushroom lentil lasagna,
so good,
is a belter.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, and the mushrooms and lentils give it some texture, which I think you really need with vegetarian meals sometimes. That's really good. What else? I mean, all the ready meal classics sell really well. Yeah. Would you believe? So beef lasagna, shepherd's pie.
You've just started a chicken tikka, haven't you?
Yeah, chicken tikka masala. That's a new one. That's good.
My brother was very excited about that.
Right.
We had the hominy pie.
Oh yeah,
that was good. I'm just doing the promotion now.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
here's all the things you can order. No, I am. We are a fan as a family, so I've tried and tested them. Go order. So, as with a Marple Journal,
yes.
If someone found your journal, maybe hope that would never happen. If someone found your journal, what's one piece of the journal you'd want them to read?
The page where they realise that I've been fair and done things the right way. Never wanted to disadvantage anybody else by doing what I do. I think there's an opportunity for us all to succeed somehow. And so do things the right way is a very good thing to do.
I like that. Thank you. Well, it's been lovely to have you, Dan. Thank you for joining the Marple Journal and sharing your story and being open and vulnerable, because that's what we're all about.
Thanks, Sophie.
I hope as an audience, listeners, watchers, you took something positive and really inspirational from Dan's story. And I think the struggles and the hardships really make what Cheshire Food Company is today. So congratulations on everything.
Thank you.
And thanks for being here. If you want to share this with a loved one or a friend or family member, or maybe a business that you know in Marple that could benefit from Dan's story, please do share it. I would really appreciate it. If you've enjoyed this episode and you want to hear more, make sure you follow us on Spotify or YouTube, wherever you are. You can subscribe on YouTube. On Spotify, if you're over there, please rate the show. I would really appreciate it. And save the episodes and click that notification bell to be notified every time a new episode comes out. We've got 2 more episodes on here, so make sure you listen to them as well. For socials, if you want to follow us, it's the Marple Journal Podcast on Instagram and just the Marple Journal on Facebook. Easy to find. If you want to get involved or you want to be a guest, you can email me. It's themarplejournal@outlook.com. I feel like I say the Marple Journal so many times. Reach out to me. I'd love to chat to you about possibly featuring on the podcast. And I'll see you here, or hear you here again for our next episode. Thank you so much. Bye-bye now.